Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Julie. I talk everything from book reviews to tarot to poetry to really a lot of other things. I'm actually thinking about changing my intro a little bit because we talk about so much here. But if any of that sounds of interest to you, be sure to subscribe. Today we are talking about Jennette McCurdy's new memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died. Now, a lot of you may remember Jennette McCurdy as Sam Puckett. She played Miranda Cosgrove's co-star on iCarly, which was a successful Nickelodeon TV show. She also starred alongside Ariana Grande after iCarly in the spin-off series Sam and Cat, and had a Netflix show briefly that I believe went 2 or 3 seasons called Between, and now she has a podcast called Empty Inside, and this book was actually, I think, a one-woman show prior to its, conversion into printed material. This book, as the title may suggest, primarily focuses on Jennette's relationship to her mother. Her mother was incredibly abusive to her, and how that relationship that she had with her mother, that was at times very close and at times very toxic, informed her entire worldview. And the book really is split up into 2 sections. Before her mom's passing and after her mom's passing. You get a feel for their dynamic pretty early on, and you also understand that Jennette's mother was probably struggling with her own mental health issues. Jennette talks a lot about, even as a young kid, as young as 6 or even younger, having to be very attuned to her mother's emotions and studying all her facial expressions, because her mom could very easily emotionally turn on a dime from being happy to sad to angry, depending on the point she was trying to make and how she wanted to get her message across. It's explained in the book that Jennette's mother struggled with hoarding as well, even though they all lived in a house. It was so overrun with clutter that Jennette and her 3 brothers had to sleep on mats in the living room, and her mother and father made do with what little space they had in separate rooms to sleep. But they didn't have a dining table. They had to eat on a mat in the corner of the floor because every surface in their house was overrun with junk and clutter. When we open the book, Jennette's mother has already survived 1 bout with cancer, so in that time she's gotten very sentimental and holds on to things for memory's sake. In fact, this sense of sentimentality runs so deep that Jennette's mother plays her children a VHS tape every week when they get back from church of when she first got her cancer diagnosis and how everyone reacted and how the mother felt, and they replay that tape every week because the mother says, they have a lot to be grateful for in their religion and all that. So you immediately get the sense of the mother's emotional manipulations and her various things that she has going on that impact her own mental health and consequently the environment that her children live in. Every week when we play this tape back, the mother has the same commentary, and she's always pretty upset with how Jennette reacted when she was 2 years old at the mother's initial cancer diagnosis, because she was singing Jingle Bells the whole time. And you can tell that the mother still has a deep wound regarding that, even though her daughter was only 2 years old at the time. And she just makes everyone feel really ill at ease and uncomfortable in these moments for her own purposes of reflection. Speaking of her own purposes, Jennette's mother, I'm just going to call her Deborah from now on because that's her name, Deborah says to Jennette, I wanted to act when I was your age. My parents wouldn't let me, but I think you could really make it, and would you do this for me, essentially? And she goes to Jennette as a 6-year-old and kind of puts this on her. And Jennette, even at this stage in life, is so eager to please her mother and so hyper aware of her mood changes and trying to keep that under control that she does agree to do this. So from the get-go, this was really her mom living vicariously through Jennette. This book does have a lot of potential triggers. I'm not sure a lot of them YouTube would even allow me to say, so I'm just going to put them down here in a little text box. But yeah, really what this book is about is Jennette kind of braving her mother's controlling behaviors throughout most of her life, and then once her mom has passed or is even ailing, Jennette is kind of forced to find her own identity and kind of deal with the fallout from years of mistreatment by her mother. From the time she was born to really around, I suppose, 18 or 19 years of age, her mother wouldn't let her shower by herself. Her mother wouldn't let her wouldn't let her do any classes or anything by herself. Her mother was always by her side, so Jennette was kind of forced to view her life kind of in relation to her mother's. And without her mother, Jennette really struggled to find her own identity and her own purpose and self-worth. And I think this is what led to a lot of her disordered eating habits. I don't really want to say, again, specifically, that is discussed in detail in this book. Jennette's mother did encourage her and endorse eating disorders within her child. She encouraged calorie restriction, encouraged her to eat almost as little as possible, because she became obsessed with this idea of Jennette delaying adulthood, both for her own satisfaction, because she didn't want to deal with Jennette growing up, and also to book more child roles. So really, Deb had a hand in orchestrating Jennette's own demons as well as her fortune. But also, and you guys can let me know what you think in the comments. I see people using this book a lot to talk about Jennette and Ariana Grande's relationship, specifically on the set of Sam and Cat. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Yes, Jennette had resentments toward Ariana Grande, not only because she was kind of braggadocious about her success when she was on set, but because Jennette frequently had to be the scapegoat or the good sport for when, Ariana Grande would miss work, miss rehearsals, miss tapings, and Jennette would kind of have to pick up the pieces of Ariana's absences. But people are really diving into this little bit of the book, and it takes up maybe a page or two, and I don't know if I'm missing pages here, but I don't think it was that deeply explored. Not that I even wanted it to be. I thought the book was more about Jennette's interpersonal family relationships, her romantic relationships, and how they are impacted by how she kind of grew up. I think it's more of a psychological study on those things, and I think the drama was very much secondary. I didn't need it to be explored, but people are making a big deal out of these little snippets, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It is implied, however, weakly, that Ariana Grande was the one to block Jennette from directing an episode of Sam and Cat, which is something she desperately wanted to do, and in fact, the main reason why she signed on to the spinoff in the first place. But again, that is a weak assumption, and it only really exists because it comes right after she talks about Ariana Grande. She just says that she was told that someone desperately doesn't want her to direct and threatened to quit the show if she did. But it could have just as easily been Dan Schneider himself, the creator and producer, director of the show, that said this as well. Even after promising that she would have that role, he isn't exactly known for being the most non-manipulative person there is. That's a horrible way to describe it, but he's just known for being very manipulative, so it doesn't surprise me that he would, get what he wanted out of her and then take back that promise either. And yes, Dan Schneider is referenced in this book. She refers to him as the creator, because he was the creator of iCarly and Sam and Cat, and probably for legal reasons as well, because she does talk in depth about his various abuses, about how he verbally abused, threatened, and took people's jobs away on set for the most minor of slip-ups. So that is discussed, and that's probably why she refers to him as just the creator. One of the more shocking revelations that this book had to tell was shortly after the end of iCarly, Jennette was offered $300,000 in hush money to not talk about Dan Schneider ever again in any capacity relating to, his misdeeds. And she refused the money, which is admirable, is noble, but I thought that was very interesting. These patterns are known by industry insiders. It's just how much money are you generating, and how valuable are you to us, as a creator. And once you kind of lose that value, that's, I think, when the curtain gets pulled back. But still, it is interesting to read about, these inner mechanizations and those revelations that Jennette has to tell. But again, I want to stress that I would say that the stuff with Dan Schneider, the resentments she harbors toward Nickelodeon, are a minor entity in this book. This book, if I had to narrow it down to a specific word or topic, I would say it's about healing. I would say, here's the inciting incident, these years of trauma that I was put through by my mother, and they were made worse by what I dealt with professionally, and here's how I'm healing, and here's what I do to heal, and I do have slips, but like she says, you know, don't let a slip turn into a slide. And, you know, she portrays herself admirably, you know, as like this person who is able to make mistakes and to come back from them. And a lot of what this book is, you know, slipping into those darker patterns, realizing it and coming back. And you always come back. And I think that's one of the morals of the story, is that you always come back from, you know, these darker sides of things. You always, you know, prioritize yourself and make room to heal from your past. And just to clarify by what I mean by the darker sides of things, you know, she struggles with disordered eating and also alcoholism, so she had there was a lot of byproducts of her trauma that she also had to heal from, in addition to that initial psychological trauma that led to all these problems and her coping mechanisms in order to feel like she had some semblance of control over her own life. So, like, I don't know, spoilers, I mean, it's not really a spoiler, it's the title of the book, and a spoiler for life is kind of interesting because it is a memoir, but, like, you know, this actually happened, you could look it up, but I guess if you want to read the book, I'd skip to this time code that I'm putting up here, because I will talk about Jennette's mother's passing and kind of what results from all that. But really, from the time that Jennette is 18, and I believe that her mother passes away when she's about 20. It's a little unclear. Again, I could look it up, but from the book's point of view, it is unclear what exactly her age is at the time. From those like 3 years, 2-3 years, Jennette's mother's health starts rapidly declining, and Jennette is then kind of allowed to be more on her own because her mom can't monitor her in the same way that she had. And Jennette kind of begins to realize these resentments that she had pent up for so long about going along with her mother's bidding, because they were so close for so long. Jennette really has a hard time deciphering, you know, what are her own feelings and what are her mother's. So in the process of kind of separating from her mother, she's able to really find herself, find her footing, and establish herself as her own person. And she does struggle deeply with, like, upsetting her mother and worrying about, like, you know, is this what you want for me, even when her mother's not around. Their relationship is depicted in a fairly nuanced way. Like, yes, her mother was the source of a lot of her pain, of a lot of her trauma, and a lot of her suffering. But at the end of the day, it's like that's still her mother, and that's still, like, was, like, her best friend in the whole world for many years. So it's a complicated thing, and Jennette herself says so in so many ways, you know, throughout the book. And you do get a sense that, like, there's a duality in this relationship, but from that, Jennette kind of has to parse out her own identity and who she is as a person, and it's really a beautiful thing to watch. The final page of this book is Jennette visiting her mother's grave and reading her tombstone and kind of talking to her and saying, you know, even though she'd planned to visit every day once her mom passed, according to her mom's wishes, those visits have become less and less frequent. And Jennette kind of ends the book by saying, you know, I visited this last time, and I know I'm not going to return. So she's closing the book pretty firmly on, you know, that relationship, and to kind of pursue her own path. And yes, it's a very sad ending. Frankly, even though the mother is not portrayed as a very sympathetic character by any means, you are kind of left feeling a little bad, because this was clearly a sick woman who, you know, took out a lot on her children. But there's a lot to their relationship, there's a lot to her, so it's a very complicated issue. And I think, you know, the send-off, the end of the book is as sweet and as, you know, fitting as it could be. This book explores so many different areas of Jennette's life. There are other revelations and things I could talk about that the book does go on to discuss, but I'm not going to do that here. You know, read the book, and if you wanted to discuss any of the major things, you know, things I didn't talk about in this video, like the stuff that happens with Jennette's father, you know, you can discuss that down in the comments. I think, you know, it's important that you go out and read this, because I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm not going to rate it either. I mean, it's this woman's retelling of her own life that feels weird to rate. I'm not going to rate a person on how well they recount their own trauma that's already explored in great detail, let me tell you. That's why I mentioned those trigger warnings. But this is a fantastic read if you're able to, you know, get past those potential triggers and really sit with, you know, Jennette and her, you know, life and all that she's gone through and all that she's healing from. And it's a continuous process. I think it's inspiring. I think it's really well told. I think it's funny at parts. She has a very distinct comical narrative voice. A little bit of cynicism thrown, well, not a little bit, quite a bit of cynicism thrown in that's kind of earned from her years doing a job that she did not enjoy and did not want to do. I find that style very funny, and I think a lot of you will too. I highly recommend this one, and go check it out when you can. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't already, subscribe, hit that bell notification because we have a lot more coming. I still have my dollar store book review series to uncover, and I recently got another book. I'm gonna put the picture here. I'm not gonna say what it is, you gotta look. That I'm really excited to read because I'm very into mob culture. But anyway, yeah, so if you're excited for any of those, feel free to subscribe, and thanks guys. Special thanks to my patrons who you will see in a few seconds. Bye-bye.